It's an honor and a privilege to welcome Dr. Friedemann Schuab. He is a cardiologist, a molecular biologist, a fear and anxiety specialist. He's also author of the best-selling book, The Fear and Anxiety Solution. Welcome, Dr. Schuab. How are you?
Very well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Oh,
Pleasure.
it's
It's
really
our
our
pleasure.
pleasure. It is.
Yeah.
So we'll get into questions.
Any questions you have, happy to answer them.
Okay.
All
So,
right.
okay, I really found this fascinating. You're from Germany. Your parents were both doctors, and
Yes.
they were very fearful. So, would you please tell our audience a little bit about yourself and go into, how you develop fear and anxiety? And I love the swimming pool story. That
The swimming
the
pool
swimming
story.
pool story.
Yeah.
I found that, I think that's when it clicked for you and it triggered, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Well, I
Okay.
think, when you grow up with anxious parents, you naturally pick up on their anxiety. It's just, you are as a child look through the eyes of your parents at the world and yourself. And if your parents are worried all the time, then you think, okay, the world is a scary place. And my parents always prepared themselves for the Third World War because they went through the second one. And so we were literally preparing ourselves several times with buying food and even, all these kind of things that they thought we would need to go through the hard times that, thank God, never came. But I developed OCD because of it, because I developed the belief
Ah.
that if I would straighten all the carpet in the house and then
Mm.
later on at least pray 30 minutes a day, maybe I could change fate and prevent World War III from happening. So that was a pretty big job to do all the time to save the world, you can imagine.
Well, coming from Germany,
Right.
I can imagine.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and so I was an anxious child that, that anxiety certainly didn't help or it wasn't helpful when I fell into a swimming pool, which is really a funny thing because I was sitting on this chair. I remember it so clearly how it was a sunny day and it was actually a day where I didn't have any worries, but I was always a little fidgety. So I was going back and forth in this chair and swaying a little bit further than I should. And it was on the side of the pool. And so, boom, I fell in there and literally sank down with the chair onto the bottom because I was so surprised
No.
and paralyzed at the same time that I didn't really go into swimming mode. I was only I don't know, 4 years old or something. I didn't know how to swim, so that would have not necessarily helped. But I
Yeah.
was sitting there and I was looking. I remember how it looked like at the bottom of this pool. And I don't know how long I was sitting there, probably just 10 seconds or so, but it feels like ever. And my sister heard the splash. So she jumped
God.
right away into the pool. She was in the house, but she heard something splashing and thank God pulled me out. Otherwise, I wouldn't talk to you
Be here.
right now.
I know.
Right.
And that to me is like amazing because, she could not have heard you at any
That's true.
time or whatever. So,
Yeah.
so do
Absolutely.
so your parents were anxious. They were physicians. You were
Yeah.
living in Germany. Um, so do you believe that's what really triggered it?
Well, I think their experiences of losing everything. My mom lived in now Poland, so this was, Eastern Prussia. So they had to flee from the Russians and lost everything. And my dad was a 17-year-old boy when he was sent into the war and ended up in a French prison camp and almost died. So there was a lot of just real hardship
Yeah.
at a young age. And
Right.
and I feel like their foundation of feeling safe in the world was so early on shattered that it never really fully healed. And my anxiety certainly had a lot also to do with that imprint of you're never really safe. You always have to expect the shoe dropping, something bad's going to happen. And those are the things many of us are telling ourselves when we are anxious. We don't trust. And that level of distrust, that's something that I really had to work on to, release and build a new foundation of trust that wasn't really given to me by my parents.
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. So would you attribute that? Is it more nurture than nature, or is it a combination of both, do you think, when we speak of anxiety particularly?
Some studies say that only 30% of anxiety is genetic. And some other studies talk about epigenetics, where you are even in the womb picking up on your mother's anxiety, and it's changing your genes, which genes are activated. Defensive genes are more activated when the mother has been always anxious. So there's a lot happening early on in life that we are consciously not remembering, but subconsciously certainly sinking in. And yes, maybe there is a family predisposition, but overall, I think nurture plays a huge role. And for all parents out there that are dealing with anxiety, I think don't feel bad or, worried about, oh my God, I'm giving my children anxiety, but take your journey of healing your anxiety serious, because you're modeling to your children that emotions are not necessarily something that have to dictate your life. Emotions are something we can heal and outgrow.
Right. Yeah.
Well, this is actually not a question in your book, or a part of your book or anything, but have you ever heard that if the child's umbilical cord is wrapped around their neck a couple times, that this would cause anxiety? I was told that.
Yes, absolutely. Can you imagine that this is really something
what happened to my daughter?
Oh, really? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it is basically a life or death situation. You're literally strangled as you come into the world. And coming into the world already is traumatic in itself. But then having the feeling you come in and you get suffocated at the same time, that makes absolute sense. I had a client who told me that in a session that he actually remembered while we were in a deep trance that his mother drowned almost when he was in her womb. And he didn't know that this was true or not. He just said, well, that's what came up. So when he asked his mom, she admitted it. Yes, she drowned almost in a lake and, barely made it out there. And I think that trauma imprinted on his subconscious. And so, yes, I can imagine the umbilical cord that strangles you is a very traumatic event.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And,
thank you for...
You talk about you mentioned the subconscious. Talk a little bit about how powerful is it? Because so many people talk about it. People who are experts in their respective fields, such as yourself, have mentioned it. How powerful is the subconscious mind?
Well, I think it pretty much runs our life. In many ways, you could say it is superior to the conscious mind because it determines the things we don't think about, but that make all the difference. So, 70 to 80% of our choices and what we do are done by the subconscious mind. Whether you are in the morning brushing your teeth, you're not thinking about how you brush your teeth, you just do it automatically. Sometimes I think about something and I don't even remember that I washed my hair. Somehow it got washed, but the hair isn't wet. So who did that? Subconscious mind.
Well, you're blessed to have hair.
Yeah. Right.
Well, and then there is the emotional component. When you really think about emotions and memories and all our beliefs and values, they are not in our conscious awareness. They are subconscious, and they dictate on how you approach life. You don't approach life with logic. That's a very small percentage. You approach life with how you feel. Whether a day is good or bad really depends on our emotions. What we remember depends on our emotions. All of those things are subconsciously, I think, organized and managed. So yes, it's a beautiful powerful friend, and unfortunately also a very misunderstood part of us that we often just blame or fight rather than really try to, make an ally.
Yeah. So
and
true.
Can you explain how we can make it an ally?
Well, the subconscious does a lot of stuff, right, as I just mentioned, but it has one flaw, which is it pretty much does that repeatedly what it has learned early in our lives when we were consciously not quite there yet. For example, this imprint of anxiety I talked about. So my subconscious said two things. A, always watch out for something going wrong, never feel safe. And B, always be the best, because you only get love if you are an overachiever. And those things were early messages that I picked up. And so my subconscious kept on doing this because it thought, well, that's my job. So to befriend my subconscious, I had to actually work with my subconscious on teaching my subconscious how to see myself and see the world differently. And that's a conscious choice. So the subconscious needs conscious, guidance in order to change its mind and say, oh, wow, the world is actually a nicer place. And I can actually, thank you, yes, the book helps definitely. There are a lot of tools in there. And I can actually love and accept myself. I don't have to always be, someone who reaches new goals. It makes a big difference. The subconscious listens. It's not listening the first time. So the subconscious has a certain kind of routine and groove it's getting a little stuck in. So you have to be consistent. But once you get the subconscious attention, it's right there for you. And it's really making your life better.
Yeah. All right. Fascinating stuff. I hadn't even planned on asking this, but since you brought it up, this is something personal. You talk about the significance of the subconscious mind and planting stuff in it for it to recognize. What is your take on affirmations? Because people say, oh, write what you want, 50 times a day, or listen to a recording in your head saying, I am this, I have the promotion, I have what's your take? I mean, is there validity in that? Any validity at all of self-affirmations?
Yes and no. So what I find is that we can say something and repeat it in our heads 50 times, but our subconscious doesn't really hear it because we're not speaking the language of the subconscious mind. The language of the subconscious mind are not words. We may as well just talk Chinese and the subconscious, okay, just whatever. The subconscious listens to emotions. It listens to sensations. It listens to visualizations, to anything that is about more the senses. That's the subconscious language. So if you have an affirmation and you can feel how good it's going to feel, and you can visualize you're having reached this goal, and you can hear something like, yeah, there is great music playing in the background when I have this goal, then it becomes contextual for the subconscious, something to hold on to. And then you're going to feel like, oh, that's cool. I actually now feel it in my body. And there is an exercise in the book, the Empowerment Accelerator, which is an affirmation that gets all of your senses and all of your body activated and doesn't just stay as a little tape recorder in your head.
You have to put the anxiety and then how you're going to, change that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Now, okay, this was another question I hadn't planned on asking because I have a million just in here, but also in here. Do you believe that like YouTube videos, clear your subconscious or, those type of things, do you think they work?
Yeah, I mean, it depends. I think what works is certainly the, self-hypnosis and even like, subliminal messages. That definitely has an effect. I just feel like similar to you wouldn't want to choose any kind of massage therapist working on your body. You don't want to choose anybody just to barge into your subconscious and rummage around. So I always feel like I choose what I'm going to listen to and who I listen to. And because the subconscious is a a very powerful, receptor. So it receives a lot of information. And if it's a wrong information, it can also get a little confused about it. And whenever then I find something that I really find does, help to empty my subconscious or help me to, for lack of a better word, reprogram my subconscious, I also prepare my subconscious. So this is what we're going to do. This is what I, would like to get from this, so that your subconscious is also more open and ready. So don't just listen to something and feel like, well, okay, subconscious is now beaten into submission. Just really work with the subconscious. Tell it, are you ready for this? And you may feel sometimes. I have people listening to my self-hypnosis and they say, I'm getting more anxious when I listen to this than before. And that shows you the subconscious is not ready to let go of the anxiety. So you have to really go to some additional steps to get there. Absolutely.
Which are in here.
Yeah.
So
you're the best promoter. Thank you so much.
You are so welcome. I promote what I believe.
Yeah, me too.
That's nice. So thank you very much.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
What about the connection as far as the gut feeling? So many people say, oh, trust your gut, trust that little voice. How is it connected, A, to the subconscious? And second, part two of the question is, why is that? What is it about the gut feeling that we should trust and listen to, that inner voice that tells us, this is a bad idea, even though logically,
I love that.
It may appear like, wait a minute, logically, I should be doing this, but something inside of me is telling me that I shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really, really good question. And it's a question also that I feel you have to nuance whether you are in generally an anxious person who pretty much has a constant feeling of, well, it's not okay in the gut, or if you are cruising along, everything is fine, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, you're feeling like, well, this tells me this is not okay. Because there is intuition, which I feel like is a form of our consciousness that is able to really just collect all this information, even though we're not aware of it, and then deduct it and run it back through our memory and our histories and says, this just doesn't feel good for whatever reason. But that is not the anxious voice. That is just a voice that is kind of, a wiser, more mature part of us. But if you are anxious per se, you're going to hear a lot of times, no, you shouldn't go on the date. Remember, they're going to reject you. They're going to find you are boring. Oh, no, you shouldn't be in a podcast. You're going to only talk, crazy stuff and people make fun of you. So that's not a gut feeling. That's the anxious, insecure voice talking. And sometimes it's really hard to distinguish between the two. So that is why I feel it's important to really deal first with your anxious voice, help that anxious voice to feel safe, and then you're going to hear much more clearly the intuition, because often intuition is more neutral. I have so many times where my intuition tells me something I should do, and I completely dismiss it, and I completely regret it afterwards, and I wish I would have listened to it because it was right. So sometimes it's just this voice that says, well, you should bring a second computer because who knows? I think, oh, now I don't need a second computer on this trip. Well, of course, I'm pouring coffee about the first one on the first one, so that computer is toast. And I wish I would have brought a second one. True story. So that is something where it's just beautiful when you actually are no longer just dismissing this voice and say, okay, maybe a part of me just knows better. And but that doesn't make you anxious necessarily. It just feels maybe illogical, but it's real.
I'm a believer in, better safe than sorry. So I'm a klutz. So I would have taken 4 computers because it would have been coffee, juice, water. Dr. Schuab, do you feel that anxiety and depression go hand in hand, or can you just have anxiety without depression, or depression without anxiety?
Well, I think they do often go hand in hand, and I find often depression is almost like the aftermath of chronic anxiety, where you're just so defeated and deflated and exhausted that you just don't want to leave the house anymore. So it can be something that, when you think about anxiety as a defense mechanism, and you would override this over and over again and just force yourself and push through and ignore it. Well, the next level could be the paralyzing effect of a depression that says, okay, you know what? I'm going to take all the energy away from you. I'm going to take all this, excitement about life away from you, and I'm just going to keep you in bed because that's the safest place for you. So that can also happen. And lots of people have depression first, and that is not necessarily connected to anxiety.
Yeah.
And so
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
but that can help, it's anxiety is just a symptom. It's about, even with depression, we can look at what are you depressed or what are you suppressing inside of you? And a lot of people I work with that had depression realized what they suppressed was ultimately themselves. They suppressed even the feelings of anxiety because it was just almost like more doable or manageable to feel nothing besides this heavy weight on them than feeling that, unsettling sense of anxiety or fear. And if we ask ourselves simply when I'm depressed, what am I right now suppressing? Sometimes it can be very surprising what answers are coming up, and they can really get you on a healing path.
Is it easy to figure that out of what you're suppressing, or does it take some time to look inwards and analyze?
Well, you can ask the question and just see spontaneously what answer comes up, and sometimes it just rings a big bell, and sometimes that answer comes up over and over, and then you get it as, well, maybe it's true, even though I didn't want to hear it. But, it is good to peel layers away, looking for the root causes, asking yourself, so when did this start? And what was my experience that are associated with that? And is there a fear of letting go of the depression that if I would let go of, I would have to do something? I remember one client who told me, if I let go of my depression, I actually have to go out into the world again and maybe, go on dates or get a job, and that's too scary. So I just gonna keep that blanket over me. She admitted that. So there was a little bit of, also realization right now that's the best I can do. I'm not yet ready to have that confidence inside of me to take on life again. And that's totally okay. It's just, a matter of not just keeping that state forever, but saying okay, maybe I'm going to try again in a few months and see how I'm feeling then if I'm ready to do the work.
Right.
Well, I just realized that I have your next book, and it's Hypnosis and Depression. Because I think that, you talked about hypnosis, right?
Yes.
And you do that on your clients, correct?
Yes.
So there you go. That fascinated me like nothing you can imagine. And you're in New York?
No, I'm actually in France.
Hello.
I am on the other side. But by the way, my next book is actually about, and it's going to come out next year, it is about confidence and how to find ourselves out of survival modes, how to get out of survival patterns. And we all know how survival patterns can keep us stuck. And, whether it's a pleasing pattern or the pattern of trying to be invisible, or the pattern of just trying to fit in, or the pattern of, always feeling like the victim. There's these patterns I described that can be beautiful keys to really discover so much more about your truth. So stay tuned. It's going to come out probably in November.
Right.
Well, there you go. That's our next show.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. But we would love to have you on in the future, because there's so much about what you specialize in. There's so many infinite questions that could be asked, could be discussed. It's such a vast subject. So hopefully.
Absolutely. I would love to. It's
I may fly to France and bring my daughter and have you help her.
well, just
I'll get in
France in
trouble
itself can be healing. That in itself is a beautiful place,
I
for
can
because
sure.
imagine.
I was supposed to go, but because of the, uh, travel restrictions and obviously the COVID, like
Yeah.
it wasn't happening, but it is going to happen. I promise you that one day. Just because I love to travel. So,
There you go.
who
Good.
knows?
Yeah.
So what are your, well, you just explained that, like, what are the goals moving forward as far as like, where do you see mental health and anxiety headed in the next few years? We are the most anxious we've ever been in our lives because we have been in lockdown and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Do you think once getting back in the world that will change, or
Well, I have the
I don't know?
hope that we are actually not any longer fighting anxiety and seeing it as, an illness, but really seeing anxiety for the most part as something that calls on us to make changes and to focus more internally than externally. I mean, when you really look at, for example, what the percentage of children and teenagers that are on anti-anxiety medication already, that wasn't the case, 30, 40 years ago. So why are these young people so anxious? Well, they are so anxious because there is so much pressure on them. There is so much that influence on the outside. Well, this is what you need to do, and this is how you need to appear, and this is the direction that you should go. So there is no time for themselves to even figure themselves out or connect to themselves. And so they are anxious because they feel lost. And I think a lot of people, including myself, anxiety made me feel lost, disconnected from myself. And when you see the anxiety, simply the call of our mind to say, look inside, stop looking on the outside, look inside. You actually embrace the anxiety as a gift and you're not fighting the anxiety anymore. It's like pain, right? I mean, if you have pain, you're not saying, oh, I need to blame my neighbor for the pain. When you have pain, you're saying, what is the underlying cause of the pain? Let's look at what may have really created this pain. And we have to do the same with anxiety. And back to, young people, I just feel like, when I look at my comments in my YouTube channel, the most comments I get for the fear of getting old. And these are 90% people that are under 20 years old. They are already so afraid of missing out in life, getting old, not being relevant anymore, what's going to happen. That fear is so prevalent. We are not even aware of that. And that has a lot to do with, I think, young people just feeling so far, I haven't really lived. So far, I don't even know what I want. So far, I have been only functioning. And I didn't really know what for. And that creates a lot of anxiety. So my hope is that we are understanding anxiety more as a catalyst and not so much as a mental disorder, which, in extreme cases, I'm not disputing that it can help to take medication for a while to just help your mind to relax. But I think it's really more important to go beyond that and try to find yourself through your emotional challenges and not run away from yourself.
Right. Fascinating. Rini, you need to turn on your mic, please.
I'm sorry, you guys froze there for a minute, so we're playing freeze tag.
Okay.
One of the best pieces of advice I ever received was from my pediatrician when my kids were little, and he said, when your kids say I'm bored, say good, because that's a form of meditation.
I love it.
Because we're,
yes.
I mean, I seriously blame schools
Mm.
with the curriculum they've created, bringing anxiety into children. And I think that 5 minutes of meditation in the morning, and we would see a different world, maybe in the future.
I don't think, we can blame anyone. We just have to take responsibility and really say, like, we have to make sure that we are consciously aware of what's happening. And what's happening is what we are doing to ourselves. I mean, how many minutes do we really spend away from our phones? How much before we go to bed we are bombarding ourselves with
social media,
some information from the outside rather than actually winding down. I mean, we are doing it, and we are, just like my parents were projecting anxiety onto me, we are doing this certainly with our children too. Bad habits, bad, ways of trying to calm ourselves down, which is not. I mean, there's nothing calming about social media, but, we're still doing it. So we just have to be also mindful about what are we modeling to the next generation.
Yeah.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
That is the perfect ending to this segment.
Yeah.
And, I mean, honestly, this has been incredible. We did ask a lot of questions that were not in the book.
On the script, yeah.
I love that. Thank you. Very organic.
It's so fascinating because it's like hearing you talk. The more you talk, the more it's like every sentence you said brought 50 more questions. Like, oh, that sentence. And it's like.
I know. We're flying to France. That's it. We
got a time limit here. So
we're flying to France, and we're going to have sessions with you. Anyway.
I'm doing that all over the world, so you can just follow me.
Come to California.
Follow you. Perfect transition.
If you come to California.
Yeah. Are you in California, actually?
Okay. I am.
I see. I thought you were in East Coast. Okay.
No. He's in Dallas, and I'm in California.
I'm in Dallas. And
Well, we are just totally global right now. This is wonderful. Well,
I know.
Thank you.
It is wonderful. And please, friends, pick up this book.
Yeah.
It
is so worth it.
Just amazing. It does not have amazing in it. It has amazing. What is the word I'm looking for?
Just a very, very informative experience of reading it, and
it has great
learning so many things, and getting inspiration to get some help, and ultimately, like I said, conquer the anxiety and the fear. And it's so many exercises, so much good stuff in it.
I don't want to toot my own horn, but I think one thing that I hear from people that read the book is that just reading them makes them feel calmer, because they feel like they have actually now more hope and more positivity around it. And that was my intention, just to help people lose the fear of the anxiety. And I hope that was something I could share with you.
You certainly are worth. Thank you. You're worth tooting your own horn. So we're going to ask you to do a little bit more of that. Can you remind our audience if where they can follow you,
where we can find you,
websites and books, and where can they get all the updates of what you're working on, sessions, and all of that?
Well, just the website, drfriedemann.com. So it's drfriedema2n.com. Or go also, there is a lot of my podcast is always on YouTube as a video. So just go to my Dr. Friedemann Schuab YouTube podcast.
I found him on Instagram.
Oh, yes, Instagram too.
I saw that. Oh, by the way, this could go on forever, but I know you're out of time. Sure wasn't.
Well,
this is
my goodness.
Mascot. This is Kona. She's our mascot.
She's adorable.
She's on every show. She really is.
Walks
She's a
right
sweetheart.
in every episode. So.
Oh my goodness.
Jumps on my lap. Bye, Kona. Anyway.
Well, she knows where the good energy is.
I know. Well,
yes,
thank
she does.
you. I appreciate that. Oh my God, you made my day. Just one quick last question. I don't even know if it will make it into the show because I'm like running your time over. Do you believe in reincarnation?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I do believe in it not only because, the Brian Weiss books, the Many Lives, Many Masters, which is just a very fascinating collection of all these people he brought back into past life regressions. I do past life regressions, and there are often very fascinating things that people are finding. But the biggest, for me, I think, proof of a existence of past lives was a dream I had. It's actually a recurring dream where I'm walking through a town that has these cobblestones, and it looks so familiar and it feels so at home. And I know when I go around the corner, there's a tavern, and sometimes, or actually one time, I was able to go even further. And so I went to what in that dream was my home. And when I opened the door, I entered in this really nice place. And then I went into a room where there was a big mirror. And I looked in the mirror, and there was this guy with a red robe and a long beard and black hair. And it was me in that dream. And just the realization of, oh yeah, that's me. And it felt like completely normal. I just don't think that my subconscious makes that up, especially with the feeling of normalcy, and it's at home, and it feels like, coming home. And when you wake up, when I woke up, I felt a little homesick. I felt like, oh, that was so nice there. I wish I could find this place again.
I know.
So that was for me a beautiful experience of, I'm sure there are going to be more, and there have been lives in the past. And it's always a very nice thought for me to have.
I feel like I have past lives. I mean, just, I do, So, I mean, we're energy. We go, we come.
Exactly. And in general, I always recommend people. So if you don't know, just pick the version that makes you feel good. So if you don't know what's going to happen after death, well, I prefer to believe that, there is a past life, there are more choices, than believing I'm just going to be fodder for the worms. So yes, definitely, there is going to be something that I hold on to and look forward to almost.
As a child, I was scared to death to die. And then I started believing in reincarnation. And now I don't want to say I'm looking forward to death, but I'm not afraid anymore. I'm not afraid anymore.
Yeah.
I mean, I could be the next queen. Who knows? Oh no, Kate will. But anyway, maybe after Kate. Friedemann, you have been a joy and a pleasure, and we do hope you come back.
We hope so. Yeah,
for sure. And it was really fun. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And I
appreciate it very much, and reach out when you want to have a little bit more of me.
Absolutely.
Okay, because we still have to get to part 2 and finish the actual question of part 1.
All right.
You enjoy your day.
Thank you. We'll see each other again.